Hi YouTubers and N-Gauge modelers. Tonight I'm going to do a restoration video on a Class 94XX. This is the body shell. It's die cast with a black insert. It's in good condition. It's got all the steps. It's got the buffers at the back and at the front. And what I have before me is all the parts. I'm just going to try and zoom in and kind of show you what I've got here. Beside the body shell I have the motor assembly. This is the contact plate. This is the lower casing for the motor, and this is the upper casing and cradle, which contains the pole points and the magnet. Whoop, you can see it's a magnet. And beside it is the armature and the bearings which go into the housing, so all of this will make up the upper housing. A couple of couplers. These are older type couplers. They're not the usual, I think they're called R004 type. So these are quite old. This is an old machine. Then I've got a wee collection of screws which will keep everything together. In the bag I have got basically the brush assemblies, which consists of 4 pieces for each brush. There is a copper clip, a capillary tube which holds the spring and the brush, one for each pole. And this wire we just make out will be the positive feed to one of the brushes, and also contains the suppressor capacitor for DC running. And then finally I have the drive wheel assembly. The drive wheel assembly consists of the center drive wheel and front and rear, and these are held on by pins, so I'm not going to remove them but keep them as they are. So that's all the parts. And what I'm going to do is try and go through a complete assembly once I can get the camera back where it should be. Try a complete assembly on camera and see how we got on. So let me just fix the camera back again, and we'll start off with the motor housing. The first point of interest is the armature and the upper housing. I've tested the armature. It's a 3-pole, and in fact it's faulty. One of the cores is open circuit and one is a very low resistance, so I have to replace this armature. So let's take it out. A company called BR Lines, run by a chap called Bob Russell. There we go. And he's great for supplying spares, quite often overnight. He's got a website, check it out. This is a type 1 armature, which does for most Farish steam locos. And it comes like this, and in fact it's a 5-pole, so I'm hoping that'll make it improved performance. But one thing to bear in mind if you are changing an armature is that these bearings, the brass bearings that come off the original, don't fit the spindle of the new one. So you have to make sure that you also order some I don't know what that means, but it's meant to be the bearings. There's small black plastic bearings, and they will fit the new armature nicely. So here's the bearings, here's a spindle of the armature, and you can see that sits in very nicely. So if you are changing an armature from an older Graham Farish steam loco to a new type 1, make sure you order the bearings as well. Again, BR Lines has them on their website. This is the upper housing, and when the bearings are fitted, this should slide in here with the commutator end there. So I'm going to fit one of the bearings onto the worm screw end, which should be quite easy. Get it there, and that will slide into this part here. In many locals, these pole pieces actually come apart, but these have been riveted in, so you have to manipulate them. So let me just try and do that. Sometimes it's maybe easier putting the bearing in first. Notice how I'm demonstrating the kind of problems that can arise so that you can see yourself. And that fits in like so. Then the worm screw end fits through the pole pieces and seats into the bearing. And then you can take the other end. You have to be careful manoeuvring through the pole pieces because it's quite tight in there. And you notice I've left the magnet out so that it makes them easier to move apart. And then that sits into a groove in the upper housing. And that should just sit in nicely. And hopefully there we go. That's the bearings and the new armature fitted. Now we can refit the pole piece. Clicks in there. I think I'll just use big pliers to seat it properly. Some of the other upper housings have pips instead of rivets. And then finally the magnet, and that kind of holds it all together. I hope that all came in the camera because I wasn't watching the viewfinder, so hopefully that's all come out pretty well. And there's the armature running freely. A little bit of lubrication just while we're there. Okay, so that's the top bit done, and these brass bearings can be kept in case I have an older model to repair. Now, the next part is the lower cradle. These quite simply slide, the rear end of this slides into a couple of grooves at the back, push that in there, and that should sit down there. There's a little insert shaped for it, and that holds that nicely. Now there will be a screw coming through which will hold everything together, and at this end here I have the locations for the brushes. Well, let's fit the brushes. I'm going to fit the upper brush here. First of all, insert the capillary tube, which allows the brush and the spring to be held in place and provides conduction. When the capillary tube is in, take the brush head, be very careful, they're very small and very easily lost, and I would advise a new set of brushes and springs if you're revising these. Oops. The springs of course tend to ping if you're not careful, so I'm just going to fit that in there carefully, and that presses the brush down, and now I can fit the upper clip which sits over the assembly, and holds it onto the upper cradle. Line it up carefully, push it down gently and evenly. And that holds the brush in place. And this little wire comes along here to feed onto a screw into the positive contact. And the suppressor capacitor has just fallen off, so I'm just going to go and resolder it. Fitted back on. Now I can fit the other brush. Turn it upside down, and the same procedure. First of all, fit the capillary tube. Sits in there. The brush head. With the brush head, I don't know if I can let you see this, if it will focus. It's not focusing, but the one end is flat. The other's got a little pip on it, and the pip is to hold the spring, so it's a good idea to get it the right way up. There we go, and the spring sits in there, pushes down in the brush, make sure it doesn't go flying anywhere, sit it in, there we are, and now I can fit the clip over the top of the assembly, and again gently, evenly and carefully, and push it in so that the brush sits correctly in there, and it will clip there and there, and that's the brushes in place. Hopefully the armature should still be free enough to turn. It is, and at this point I should be able to apply power and see if it will run. So I'm just going to go and get my power leads. Power leads connected. Apply a little bit of power. And there it is. It's off-load, so I really don't want to run it too fast. Going in one direction. Slowing down. And change direction. And there it is. It's a bit noisy, probably because it's lying on the bench and probably hitting something. But that's certainly working. The next task is to fit the wheels and the connector plate, which will involve a couple of screws and this long 10BA. Fitting the centre drive wheel, seating it sitting properly, and then the front and rear driving wheels. Just a little bit of oil, which I've already done, and then you have to fit the connector plate. And when you're fitting the connector plate, just check that these arms are quite delicate and they're quite small, and it's very easy for these to spring out. Make sure they're properly seated behind the driving wheels, and they go in this way because the 10BA nut holds this bit. Oops, I missed the camera. 10BA holds there, and that is a positive power contact going through to the motor. Carefully sit the contact plate onto the lower cradle, and as I said, checking that the contacts sit behind the wheels. So I just tend to go around them. That one there needs to go in, and this one here just trying to steer it. There we are. And on the other side I've missed one here, so I just gently ease it in, try not to bend them. There we go, that's okay that side. and they're still okay on, nope, not the middle ones come out again. And I find this happens quite a lot, so just gently in there. Now we've got to that stage, I insert one of these small 8BA screws into the back of the contact plate, and that tends to hold it together. Although I've forgotten, I should just have put in the, sorry about this, I should have put in the coupler which sits between the contact plate and the lower cradle arm. So putting in the correct way, which is that one, try and ease it in without releasing the contacts. So I'll have to check them again. That's okay there, that's okay there, and that one just came out a wee bit, so get that one underneath. There we are, middle one's out. And this is something you have to work with, folks, is just making sure that all the contacts go in there. And also in the upper contact plate, the arms have to rub against the chassis, so you have to ease that out there and try and sort of wiggle it so that the contacts actually rub against the chassis behind the wheels, because that's your negative pole. And it's quite a finicky job, especially an older machine that's been taken apart a couple of times. These things tend to get kind of warped slightly, so I'm just trying to ease that in. That's good. Yes, I've now got it there. So a bit more tension on the screw at the back, and just a quick check, make sure the contacts are still behind the wheels, they're okay there, and they're okay there. Right, make sure the wheels are okay. Now we can try and fit the con rods there. This particular set of con rods is held in the middle, 2 pins in either con rod that fits into the wheels, and putting this one in, try and make sure they're lined up in the same way, in there and in here, and that seems to be those. Yep, it's coming along quite nicely. This is a 10BA bolt, or an M1.5, I think, if you're working in new money. Goes through here. This will press onto a copper plate and just make sure it fits in all the way through, and it comes out of the top here. You can just see it there. And this little wire the nut fits over the cable, and that should just hold it all in place there. And at this point this should work from the contacts. So again, let me bring my well, let me try again. Sorry about that, folks. Let me try again. I'm going to bring the power leads across and see if I can get this to work. That one there, and that one there. Apply the power, and you can see it's starting to work. I've got a lot of power on, so let me just turn it up a little. And there we go. It's good. I'm going to tell you something, guys, about this particular little machine I have. I actually bought this about 3 months ago with all the bits that you saw at the beginning of the tape, and I never really got round to doing anything about it until now. So apart from the armature and the brushes, everything is as it was 3 years ago. So I don't know how long it's been out of action before then. So you can see that this is the first time I've had this little baby running for quite a long number of years. And I'm quite pleased that it's worked relatively easily. So I'm just going to finish here and I'll get it assembled and we'll get it onto the rolling board and see how well it behaves. And that's where we left it all those years ago. As you can see, what I've done is I've removed this capacitor. It was just getting in the way, causing all kinds of problems. So I'm just going to leave it like this. You can see it running nicely. And all I'm going to do now, put the cover on, check it again, and then we'll put it on the track and let it run for a little while. So that was a quick visit back to an earlier restoration I tried to carry out and didn't get finished. And then I discovered I completed the locomotive without filming it, so I thought I'd just add this little bit in space. Hope you enjoyed that. Look back at some of my earlier work, and in the process of going through my videos I've found about 3 others. So look forward to some of those getting updated and online soon. Okay, well, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that, you might want to comment, give me a like if you haven't already done so, and you like N-gauge trains, repairs, restoration, not just running, then you can maybe subscribe and keep up to date with me. And until then, all I can say is take care, everybody. Thanks again for watching, and hope to see you back here soon. So until then, from me, Sort6233, it's bye for now.